4 minutes ago. A coup and seizure of power is beginning in the Kremlin. A bloody end for Putin. Kadyrov is secretly preparing Chechnya to rebel against the bunker dweller. Regions are breaking away from the Russian Federation live on air. A show of force in Transnistria. Moldova struck without hesitation. Shoigu has sounded the alarm in the dictator's office. Another failure added to Russia's record. Sensation, Trump's last day. Washington actually went through with it. The American leader is about to leave the White House. Meanwhile, the soldiers of the revolution are preparing to encircle Moscow. Putin's associates played a dirty trick on him and sparked a mutiny within the ranks of the world's second army. Shocking insider information. That's it, that's all. The Z Patriots have held a funeral for the Krasnodar region. All this in our episode of Hellpoint. Shock, a palace coup. Moscow is entering a phase of heightened political turbulence. The elites are overthrowing Putin. It seems they've prepared a real trap for the bunker dweller. Tensions are rising in the regions. Chechnya is no longer staying silent. Natives of Central Asia and the Caucasus are preparing a coup. The warnings are over. Will Putin be able to stay on his feet when an armada in the form of his own country comes against him? The most interesting part, coming up. The eventual and total collapse of the entire Russian Federation.
The moment we have all been waiting for is rapidly approaching and is now very close at hand, practically just around the corner and almost upon us at this very second.
But all this talk will lead nowhere. Putin is losing power and trust. A coup in Moscow is inevitable. Over the past 2 years, there has been a significant increase in tensions between the local population and migrants in Russia. Information about conflicts, especially with Chechens, is appearing more and more frequently on social media. Russians are showing with all their being that they are not welcome in Putin's country.
If you do not agree with this, you can just adapt. Maybe find yourself a Russian soldier, or whatever you want. I completely understand everything. I understand everything. Are you currently at your factory right now, or what? What's my take on Russians? This is how I feel. I'm telling you, go work with Russians. Russians, Russians! Well, if that's what you want, you can accept this question. Why can't I work where I want? And why don't you live in Chechnya?
But who and where will still be left to live? That's an open question. The Chechens are preparing a coup.
We will put that government in power in Moscow.
This is Ruslan Kutayev, a Chechen public figure and president of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus. He is a supporter of the idea of creating a unified North Caucasian state and often makes predictions about the inevitable collapse of the Russian Federation.
We will be the primary force that determines what happens in Moscow. Right now, we are just waiting. We are waiting for the main event to arrive. It will be an event when total chaos begins and the inevitable struggle for power finally starts.
According to Kutayev, in order for Islamists to seize power in Moscow, it is necessary to wait just a little longer until the political and economic situation in Russia deteriorates enough.
And only with our explicit formal approval will a new governing body be established that will govern and lead Russia. Only with us. There has long been a tradition in Russia. Whoever takes the capital takes control of the entire country. And in the capital, absolutely no one will govern and no one will ever come to power without our express consent. And we can say this quite confidently because we have very solid grounds for making such a claim.
Although the information space is filled with rumors about an imminent change of power, there are still no real signs of an immediate coup in Russia. However, one should not ignore the critical mass of negative factors: prolonged military miscalculations, systemic corruption, and economic decline. It is precisely these factors, together with the hidden split among the elites, that form a solid foundation for future political.
This leads to a state of total destabilization, which systematically weakens the nation's core institutions and undermines the social order, creating a volatile environment where governance fails. These unfolding processes are intimately linked to the death of Putin or to specific operations aimed at his deliberate removal from power, a sudden palace coup, or the appointment of a formal successor. As the presence of all these various factors continues to grow, it is increasingly certain that the diverse nationalities of the southern regions will begin to assert themselves and raise their heads.
It's no secret that the Russian economy has long been sliding to the bottom. Already this fall, the country could see a repeat of the 1917 situation, warns the leader of the communists, Gennady Zyuganov. Economists note that Russia is facing a typical wartime crisis: rising military expenditures, a budget deficit, and increasing prices for fuel and food.
Recently, Putin himself, in response to a question, admitted that the Russian economy is in a very difficult state, which probably even more so has spurred. This encouraged the Chechen people and other ethnic groups across the Caucasus region to rise up and stand against the heavy-handed oppression imposed from Moscow, at least within their own ancestral lands.
The crisis in Russia could erupt at any moment. And will Putin be able to hold on to power then? The question remains open.
It has begun. Moldova suppresses Russian soldiers in Transnistria. Shoigu burst into tears and started weaving here. Donbas. Clear signal. There was a distinct smell of burning in the Kremlin. Putin is silent, has brought the region to a critical point and is trying to hide everything. Maya Sandu is breaking through with a secret plan. Moldova holds the trump cards. Ukraine is on alert. Kirill Budanov has been talking about this for a long time. The first shocking details. Next. We will defend by all possible and impossible means. The Kremlin is once again threatening Moldova over an alleged violation of the rights of residents of the unrecognized Transnistria.
We must not forget that more than 220,000 Russian citizens live in Transnistria. Their interests and safety are now facing a significant and direct threat due to the increasingly reckless and highly irresponsible actions of Kyiv and Chisinau. If such a need arises, Russia will undertake every single necessary measure and use all available means to protect them in full accordance with the Constitution.
Threats are coming from the Kremlin via Sergei Shoigu during new talks between Chisinau and Tiraspol. No progress was made between Moldova and the unrecognized Transnistria at the meeting on April 16th. But these diplomatic negotiations and discussions clearly show a strong desire to reach a final and lasting agreement. And most importantly, this is happening entirely without the involvement of Russia. The meeting took place in a private one-on-one format to ensure confidentiality.
In addition to that, it is important to emphasize that this represents the second major diplomatic negotiation of this kind to occur within the year 2026, signaling a notable intensification of international discussions as various global leaders strive to reach a consensus on these critical issues before the current year comes to an end.
On the same day, Moldova makes an important decision. Chisinau declares the leadership of the Russian troops in Transnistria persona non grata. If they attempt to cross into territory controlled by Moldova, they will be deported to their country of origin, to Russia, with an indefinite ban on re-entry.
These people have been declared undesirable on the territory of the Republic of Moldova, and the reason is very simple and specific. The Russian army is illegally present on the territory of the Republic of Moldova. That is exactly what we said. We dared to make this decision and declare them undesirable.
And after that, hysteria began in the Kremlin. That same Shoigu is shouting that Moldova, with the support of the EU, is trying to expel the Russian operational group from Transnistria. Indeed, it's unclear why Moldova would want to drive Russian occupiers out of its own country. And this Transnistrian hysteria from Russia is being intensified by Russia's own failures. On other fronts,
the semi-authoritarian regime of Orban in Hungary, which of course was actively supported by the Russians, more than that, it was even orchestrated by Russian special services. In Ukraine, the Russian army has bogged down and cannot achieve its objectives. Moreover, they have shown their weakness to the whole world. They have lost their zones of geopolitical influence, essentially already in the Middle East, in Central Asia, in Africa. And this impotence is where it all begins, agony. And even though they desperately try to comment on something, they are at least pretending to maintain a firmly strong and independent position on the matter.
The Kremlin's hysteria makes sense. Ukraine's intelligence chief Kirill Budanov says Russia fears for its troops in Transnistria.
The Russians are worried about their contingent and want to take at least some measures to will somehow strengthen it.
But there are almost no opportunities to reinforce them. The bans and restrictions imposed by Chisinau not only complicate but actually block the rotation of Russian troops. With these small but confident steps, Moldova, it seems, is following one of the main points of the plan for the reintegration of Transnistria, the demilitarization of the region.
Russia can intimidate through various aggressive tactics. Russia can deliberately raise the stakes to create tension. Russia can shout loudly during the complex negotiation process inside Moldova itself. And Russia can try to defend its strategic interests and presence in Transnistria by using force. But it has no real instruments, no actual physical or military support, not even for its own side. There is currently no sign of support, even for the contingent of its own military base located there.
But this is not the only problem the Kremlin faces in Transnistria. Support for this small group of loyal people is also slipping through Russia's fingers. After all, Russia has abandoned the people it once threatened to protect. Due to a lack of resources, sanctions, and the absence of a shared border, the Kremlin has reduced its support for the region, even in terms of energy. And yet there was so much talk about it.
Right now, above all, we are concerned about the electricity supply to Transnistria.
Moldova fully understands this sensitive issue. Working together with the EU, it has already started to act as a savior, providing tens of millions of euros to support the region's gas supply.
The important thing they can truly rely upon is activating their own internal reserves. And those can only be activated through the act of total purchasing. That is, a large amount of money needs to be spent on this. There hasn't been any ideological basis there for a long time. Of course, there isn't any now either.
But as Russian classics say, there is no money either. In the midst of this perfect storm, isolated Russia, the territory is drawing closer to Moldova. Although just 2 years ago, the Kremlin considered this impossible.
There are rumors, you've probably heard about this, that it just needs to be suppressed by military means. This entity, and let Russia endure the heavy burden of yet another crushing strategic defeat. But even so, they find themselves facing a situation where they still have absolutely no viable prospects, none whatsoever for any kind of meaningful recovery in the near future.
However, the louder the threats sound, the more obvious it becomes. The Kremlin is losing what it tried to hold on to for years.
Now it's certain that Trump won't last until the end of his term. This is already being discussed openly. The American leader is rapidly going downhill. The noose around the politician's neck has tightened. There's no point in hoping for a miracle. The world order has collapsed and Donald Trump's decisions have led to shocking consequences. The time for reckoning has come. Americans are going to extremes, quite literally. Words are driving the president out of the White House. What will happen next? Don't miss it.
Donald Trump was nearly struck down by a stroke. The American billionaire who so desperately wanted to write himself into US history as the greatest president of all time will be remembered by the world as one of the worst.
Thank you very much.
Trump's ratings are going down the drain. There can be no talk whatsoever of a third term or any further successful political career. A wide range of analysts claim that Donald won't even be able to hold on to the presidency until the end of his official term.
Here you can see that the overall approval rating has fallen down to 37% in this poll. That's 2 points lower than the previous occasion when we carried out this specific survey. How is that time different from today? Of course, it's the very early stages of the Iran war, which is still ongoing. It seems this is hurting Trump politically.
To say it hurts is putting it very mildly.
The vast majority of people say that, in their opinion, the country is moving in the wrong direction. Many of them point to the economy, saying they are well aware of the price of gasoline and the price of groceries. And these are people, many of whom are working in the labor market. Ordinary Americans.
More than half of Americans have a strongly negative attitude toward both the war against Iran started by Trump and the current White House policy. It was precisely the conflict between Washington and Tehran that became the last straw for voters.
He is waging a war that is extremely unpopular. 2/3 of the country either strongly disapprove or to some extent disapprove of what he is trying to do. These are not the conditions under which an American president can successfully conduct a war.
As of today, even the most ardent Trump supporters disagree with the current president's policies. Even Tucker Carlson himself had an epiphany on the eve of what Donald Trump is doing.
Both I and everyone else who supported him, you wrote the speeches for him, I ran his campaign. We are certainly deeply involved in this. It's not enough to just say, well, I've changed my mind, or, oh, this is bad, I'm leaving. As a matter of fact, I and countless millions of people like me are the main reason for what is happening right now.
Imagine the disappointment of a die-hard American propagandist. He even went so far as to offer a formal public apology for once supporting Trump.
I want to say that I sincerely apologize for misleading people, and it was unintentional.
Even his own party has recently begun to turn their backs on Trump. Republicans and their voters are already fed up with the long-standing antics of the American billionaire.
A quarter of those who call themselves Republicans are in the camp dissatisfied with how the president is handling the Iran issue. This is what defined the story of his second term: inflation and the rising cost of living.
Against this backdrop, talk of a possible impeachment is growing louder and more frequent. Mass protests and criticism over the economic situation and foreign policy are increasing the pressure on the White House. In these specific circumstances, the Democrats, who have never liked Trump, might try to use the president's declining public support as a reason to initiate impeachment proceedings. And according to analysts, their chances are high. After all, more and more often, even Republicans are joining the ranks of those who oppose the current US president's actions.
At this very moment, Putin's army is preparing to raise arms against the dictator. Inside the president's administration, it's utter chaos. The bunker dweller was betrayed by his own people, but now the knives are sharper than ever. Political games have affected the army as well. Putin has deflated. Could a mutiny among the Kremlin soldiers really flare up to the point that it burns everything down? Let's watch it burn to the ground.
Putin's approval rating is relentlessly falling, and these results aren't from some so-called foreign agents, but from the All-Russian Center, the Vitizayon Public Opinion Research Center, a state organization that conducts these surveys specifically on the Kremlin's orders.
Vladimir Putin's ratings have been declining for a month and a half straight. The most telling answer concerns the question of the Kremlin owner's job performance. Currently, 66.7% of respondents answer positively. This is the lowest figure since March 1st, when 77.5% gave such an answer of those surveyed.
Such ratings don't appear on their own. They were approved by the administration, specifically by Kremlin strategist Sergei Kirienko.
There is an intense and ongoing confrontation between the FSB, primarily its second service, the political intelligence branch, and the presidential administration, in the person of Kirienko, around all sorts of bans on the internet and, above all, the ban on Telegram. These are the kinds of leaks we're seeing. Negative sociological data is being produced precisely because of this conflict, and so they are slipping him real bad declining ratings so that he sees these ratings in those folders and asks, what is this? What's going on here at all? And someone there whispered something to Kirienko. You see, these FSB guys, these blockheads, they just went and banned Telegram, but people are still finding ways around it.
The conflict involving the first deputy head of the presidential administration, Kirienko, is not the only one. Not only with the FSB, but also with the Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. The essence of the conflict concerns the upcoming elections. Putin explicitly promised Belousov to guarantee seats in the Duma for the so-called SVO heroes. But now it turns out that these prestigious, cushy positions will be taken by fraudulent soldiers.
On the eve of the Duma elections in September 2026, Putin promised Belousov a generous political gift for the soldiers: 150 veterans of the war in Ukraine. In Ukraine, they will be included in the United Russia party list for the parliamentary elections. Guaranteed seats with all privileges as a reward for serving the country. However, it so happened that the electoral lists are compiled by Kirienko. And when, at a closed meeting, he presented the selected names, Belousov realized that these were not real fighters but rather bureaucrats who had spent only a few months in the army. and most importantly, far from the front lines.
The Italian publication Corriere della Sera has reported that a visibly enraged Belousov proposed to compile the list himself. But Kyrienko strongly objected to this, claiming that bringing veterans into the Duma was far too risky, because they are uncontrollable and could rise up against the Tsar.
It is unclear how the internal struggle within the presidential administration will be resolved. Putin needs Kyrienko for the electoral process, which, as always, is rigged and devoid of surprises. But sanctions against Belousov over the issue of veterans in parliament could have the opposite effect and negatively impact morale. Troops.
Random people, and especially uncontrollable soldiers, must not make it into the State Duma this September. There should only be trusted people, and this doesn't apply only to the United Russia Party. Everyone who could be bothered tried to boost their ratings by exploiting the internet issue.
Who is developing a potential Telegram replacement? Go to the front lines. What are you doing, idiots?
We're launching a new project. It's not related to the election campaign. I'll complain to the LDPR.
But so all the speculation on this topic from Duma representatives stopped because an order came down from the administration. The Kremlin required all parties to coordinate any criticism of internet restrictions with the presidential administration.
This started against the backdrop of all the raids, because even back in January-February, Mironov was ranting about an idiot in Roskomnadzor, and Davankov was launching a campaign for Telegram, so everyone fell silent at about the same time. Every idea requires a phone call or a meeting. Everything is moving very slowly.
There are just over 4 months left until the State Duma elections. So far, the parties have not been given a clear set of topics on which they can work during the pre-election campaign period. For now, the only and main directive from the Kremlin is not to criticize the authorities. The situation in the Kremlin administration is critical, since Putin's and United Russia's ratings are falling, and the right people must get into the Duma. And at the same time, it is necessary to avoid conflict with the FSB and the Ministry of Defense.
Happened? The explosion at Putin's secret factory provoked a shocking when oil rain is falling over enemy territory. The Russians are whining and throwing knives at the authorities. This is a catastrophe. Putin has brought the region to a terrible state. Krasnodar Krai is being cut off, drones have started the countdown, epic footage has flooded the internet, and a multi-kilometer zone of total apocalypse has emerged. Has Tuapse turned into Hiroshima? Let's watch.
Tuapse, Krasnodar Krai, Russia, one of the largest oil hubs on the Black Sea, and for several days now the area of fire, smoke, and consequences has extended far beyond a single city.
Yeah, guys, this is the difficult situation we are facing today. It's raining quite hard, but the fire still hasn't been put out at all, and there's absolutely nothing left to breathe. Everything is constantly coming right our way, all of this thick, suffocating black soot. What a complete and utter disaster.
Nightmares happening at the oil depot in Tuapse. Just look at this. What is this anyway? It's like some kind of horror movie.
Following the drone strikes on the Tuapse oil refinery on April 16th and 20th, fuel storage tanks erupted into flames. According to various media reports, the fire has been burning intensely around the clock. They managed to contain the fire but can't fully extinguish it. Watch. Flares up once again.
That was a total nightmare. Did you see how the fuel suddenly broke through the containment? You can actually hear the sounds like something is burning. It's hot, you can feel it.
It's the tanks with petroleum products that are burning, and that's thousands of tons of fuel. In fires like these, the temperature can exceed 800 degrees, and thick black smoke rises into the air. Satellite images show that the smoke plume stretched for more than 300 kilometers. Meanwhile, Russians are already in panic, evacuating and sharing their thoughts.
Everyone's had enough by now, it seems to me. I would like to dedicate this entire video today not to the specific fact that people aren't being given a bunker.
It is not simply because of the events currently unfolding in the sky, with smoke clouds drifting through the air, while everyone insists there is no intoxication and that everything remains within normal limits. These are just ordinary people, just everyday pedestrians who are suffering in the same way that you are. The only thing that truly sets us apart from you is that perhaps your minds have been thoroughly brainwashed.
It passed over the Black Sea and covered part of southern Russia, including areas of the Krasnodar and Stavropol regions. According to environmentalists, when oil burns, sulfur oxides, nitrogen oxides, soot, and fine particulate matter, so-called PM 2.5, are released into the atmosphere. But the strangest thing is the so-called oil rain. After explosions and intense burning, particles of fuel and its byproducts rise into the atmosphere from its processing. As they cool, they condense and fall together with precipitation.
You know, it is just like my entire car is completely covered in thick oil. Just look at it. Everything here is absolutely and totally covered in oil.
When petroleum products burn, oxides of sulfur and nitrogen are released into the air. In the atmosphere, they combine with moisture and form weak solutions of sulfuric and nitric acids. Given the scale of the fire and the length of the smoke plume, about 300 kilometers. Such precipitation can fall not only in Tovse, but also in other regions, the south of Russia.
This is just some kind of absolute environmental catastrophe. What am I supposed to do? I don't want to remain in this place anymore. Damn, look, I can't get this disgusting shh off my hand. Even with soap, why doesn't it wash off? What is this, Chernobyl?
After the strikes on the oil infrastructure in Tovse, some of the oil products ended up in the waters of the Black Sea. According to media reports, we're talking about an oil slick covering an area of up to 10 square kilometers. To understand the scale, that's an area the size of a small city.
A significant quantity of oil products is continuously streaming and accumulating here.
It's not just oil that's getting into the sea, but a mixture of heavy oil products, including fuel oil. At the same time, official statements are usually limited to general phrases. The fire is contained, work is ongoing, and the situation is controlled. Specific data, spill volume, composition, pollution extent, and the scale of consequences are rarely fully disclosed. I
walked around the district and didn't find a single monument or instruction on what to do in case of a Chernobyl-type accident. They only put up those official notices at Komsomolska 1, which is exactly where I worked all day yesterday. And even after looking everywhere, I simply couldn't find any specific information about the emergency shelters or where the keys are kept, if those keys even exist in this building at all. So, Yevgeny Olegovich, come over. Let's figure this out together. Where, who, what, and everything related to it.
That's all from me for now. This was me, Darina Hutsakalo. Even more hellish news in our next episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.